So, I am 23 years old. I have just arrived to New York City. My name is Esther Perel. I am in psychotherapy, and I speak to the therapist about how I don't want to be an analyst. I don't think I am made for being neutral and silent. I want to find a way where I can do therapy and use myself a little bit more. I'm only going to be 1 year in New York. Where can I go learn something? And she says, Sal Minuchin just arrived from Philadelphia. You should give him a call. And at that time, you could still call people like this and just say, hello. I'm here from Belgium, but I just arrived from Israel. I'm told you have a connection with Israel. And my therapist told me I should come and talk to you about possibly learning from you. And he's like, why don't you show up at my office? Come and we'll talk. And then I knew nothing. I had never done much of anything. I had 1 year of training at the Cambridge Family Institute. And he said, you can observe. You can spend a few weeks here to observe. So I went every week and I observed and I learned, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And after 10 weeks, he said, you're done observing. That's about as much as you can learn in 10 weeks. Now you can go. And I said, I'm only here for 1 year. I'm here from Israel. I need to take in as much as I can. Please, please let me stay a little bit longer. He says, who are you? What is this? You can be a fly on the wall. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear you. You can come back. So I stayed as a fly on the wall for quite a while. And then one day there was a family behind the one-way mirror. And do you remember any of this? Chutzpah, that's all I had. I had zero experience, just chutzpah. You know, and there was a family of Holocaust survivors, and somehow you looked at me and you said, don't you know something about this? And I said, yeah, and I blah, 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 blurted something, and I talked, and he said, why don't you go tell them? And you sent me to the other side of the window, and I had to deliver the message to the family. And then when I came back, you said, you can move to this row. And from that moment, I existed on the radar of Salvador Minuchin. That led me to 3 years of training with Sal, which then continued with one of the best experiences, which was that Jack, my husband, basically realized that there was some expansion possible in the suite, and he said, Sal, you should rent the other offices so we could have a bigger suite and we could have an office here with you. And so we spent a few years sharing offices together, working together, which meant like this. You would be sitting in the office, you would be seeing a family, you're totally immersed, and then he knocks at the door and he comes in and he starts talking because he has a thought. And you say, Sal, I'm in session. And he continues talking, and then he says, oh, sorry, and then he walks away. And then half an hour later, he has another thought, and he just knocks at the door. And you basically told the people, it's good because I'm anointed, you know. I'll get better ideas with you if he keeps knocking at the door. So I teach, and I quote you probably every time I have a class or every time I'm in session. There is an entire repertoire of words that are completely associated with you. And they go like this. One would be, when you work with a family, you always have to work both sides of the stoop or both sides of the street. That image, you know, with loads of associations. Another one would be, when you work with a couple, it's always a succession of stroke and kick. Stroke and kick. You know, and the kick is hard, but then you come back and you stroke again. And then you have this fabulous word, which I have no idea what it means, but I've always known when to use it, which is when you say to somebody, how did you become such an nincompoop? You know, and how have you convinced them that you are such an nincompoop? And that complete kind of complementary thinking, continuously relational, that you actually, how is it that you have convinced these people that you are so bright or so ignorant, and that that notion, I cannot even tell you how completely revolutionary it was in my thinking. And then one of your greatest metaphors for working with couples is that it is like playing pool. You never kick the ball that you want to hit the hole. Which is the ball that you need to kick so that that one will get in there? And that notion of playing pool, that constant thinking non-linear, was absolutely not even transformative, it shaped me. And then, yes, of course, you had a whole series of political metaphors about who is the prisoner and who is the warden and who is the sheriff and who is the defense attorney and the public defender and all of these metaphors that I still use even till today. And then one of the better ones is when you would look at a couple and you would say, when did you divorce? You know, what are the ones? How did you become so good at making them worry about you? This notion that it's not even, you know, you are a worrier, it's that somebody else is doing this thing to you. You continuously taught this phenomenal dual track, which was there is structure and then there is spontaneity. The structure is this fantastic map of family therapy, of your structure, this language, this understanding of the systems and all of that. But within that, and now I'm going to talk just as someone who was, you know, shaped by you. Like all of us have books that are the books that shaped us, the formative books. I don't even know if we read them today if they would have the same impact. But you were my book. And I still read that book. And there are some books you go back to your entire life. And they always will shape you differently. And what you taught us was the use of yourself. And that you will never be the same person in 2 sessions in a row. That you know where you go, but for the rest, you have no idea that you do what you do. Here's another major one. The idea that the diagnosis isn't about collective information, but that you first do an intervention, and on the basis of their response, you will know the diagnosis. That was a complete, for anyone who studied psychodynamically, just these kind of complete groundbreaking ideas. That you need to make people anxious in order for them to actually change. That problems take place in context, that the goal of a first session is for people to come in with one story and to leave with another. You gave me once an assignment, which I have given to a number of my students. I was a family and I couldn't deal with the guy and I didn't like the person, and you said, you go back in there, you have an hour to come back with one thing you like about him. That was the supervision. And the entire hour, I looked for something to like about him. So that was on the front of the learning. And then you became a kind of a grandfather to our boys. And actually found one of those pictures, if you can put it up. For those of you who heard Bessel yesterday talk about the little boy who at 9/11 was watching the people fall and thought that they fell on a trampoline. This was right after, when we came to visit you in Long Island. And I don't think I've ever known somebody who could play better with children than you. You just taught us to love children and saw something and that was completely unbounded. You know, that was probably the best definition of flow, was the way that you would play with children. And they didn't have grandparents, and I didn't have grandparents, and you were that grandfather figure for us for quite a while. And so we carry you all inside of us in so many ways, and I cannot thank you enough.